About 5 years ago, I started my signature series, Shovelware. The purpose of the series was to find some either obscure or outright bad video games to review and express my frustration with. After the pilot episode, which was Wii Play, which was more or less a test episode, I looked at my collection of Wii games to figure out what I should do as my first quote-unquote serious episode. I knew the game Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz on Wii was not a very good one, mostly based on what I had seen from reviews and from what was a very limited experience. I decided to write and focus on this game for my second review. Unfortunately, being 15 years old with limited equipment, the video wasn't very well made, and I feel as if I didn't get my points across. There are lots of statements I made in this video that I outright don't agree with, but at the same time, there are some that I still stand by to this very day. In December 2018, when doing my Season 1 Revisited episode in the same series, I had the opportunity to re-review this game, but unfortunately I had a very stressful fall season. Not only did I spend a lot of my time and energy doing the Doki Doki Literature Club review, which was my biggest episode at the time, in my area there was both a mass shooting and breakout of fires, the later of which caused me to evacuate twice in the same week. As such, my work ethic was impacted and my productivity became scattered. Instead of delaying the video, I unfortunately rushed it out, and it didn't really become more of a review than my second episode. Well, third time's the chance, I guess. When I first heard Banana Blitz was the Monkey Ball game they choose to port to modern consoles, I had rapidly changing opinions, from anger, confusion, to a sense of hopelessness, and, paranoia from wondering if I was fated to review this game or not. I distinctly remember the day it was announced. I mean, I should. It was like half a year ago. After my anger and confusion, I slowly came around to the idea of the game, knowing while that the original game was not very good, they could at least turn it around and make it, well, playable. I followed the release of it up to release day, which was very enjoyable, in part to the game developer's new Super Monkey Ball Twitter, the old one was dead, which showed new levels, costumes, and additions, along with surveys and questionnaires about the future of the series. It was dumb, but I was actually getting hyped for a game I once detested. For the purposes of this review, I'm reviewing this game both as how it did as a remake and how it does as a standalone game, if that makes any sense. I also should point out that I did speedrun this game when it came out, and for the purposes of this review, we'll be ignoring how it plays as a speed game, and we'll be focusing more on how it is as a casual and accessible experience. So, did the game live up to its hype? I mean, how couldn't it at a budget price of $40, right? Well, as I said 5 years ago, let's dig into this turd and see how bad it really is. You can tell I was like 15 when I wrote that quote because it's just so incredibly cringe. Starting up the game, it's obvious that the menu and presentation has received a major upgrade, and I have to say, if there's anything in this game I appreciate, it's this. The game really looks crisp and clean almost everywhere, from the opening menu to the UI of the game itself. I think the color design choice of yellow and black was really cool, and honestly, taking nostalgia out of the picture, this may be the best menu and interface a Monkey Ball game has ever had. Not only that, but this is the first Monkey Ball game to have a distinct theme song written by the Japanese band Banana Fritters. This song, both in a vocal and instrumental form, really gets you pumped up and ready to play the game. So right off the bat, the presentation of this game just helps it in so many ways. The 2006 menu looked bad at the time and controlled even worse. This, at least on the menu screens, feels like a video game released in 2019, and I didn't expect it from a budget remake of Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz. Instead of the challenge mode in the classic era, which focused on a beginner, advanced, and expert mode, this game goes for a straight up story mode. The narrative of this game is that a new villain, F in the chat for Dr. Baboon, Captain Krabuchin, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, scatters up the golden banana, and Aya and the gang have to find them scattered across many worlds. That's literally it. It's extremely shallow and kind of unnecessary, so why even have one? I think Super Monkey Ball 2 did this story idea a lot better, with multiple cutscenes and a sense of progression, even if they were very cheesy. Here, it kind of feels like more of an afterthought. Again, not really a big deal since it isn't a big part of the game, but hey, there's content in the game and this is a review, so I'm gonna critique it. Before getting into gameplay, I really do think that having only a story mode really hurts the flow and progression that the classic games introduced. I always felt like the beginner, advanced, and expert setup was not only way more creative, but taught the player to get good at the game, so you really had to become skilled to beat them. With a pure story mode, you also lose concepts like warp goals, which really promoted not only exploration, but encouraged the player to try harder strategies on the levels, and it improved the replayability on future attempts. That being gone is bad enough, but the biggest problem that comes along with a forced story mode is the lack of true multiplayer. With Monkey Ball, many people speedrun the game, coming up with new strategies and skills, which of course is awesome, but I think it means many of us forget how Monkey Ball is perceived in a casual lens. In the eye of a casual audience, Super Monkey Ball is a party game, and not a single player game or a platformer. The original game struck a perfect balance. You can play it single player if you wish, but if you want to host a party where 4 people can kick back and play together, you can. And as someone who played the original games as a kid, this is exactly how it was. I remember sometimes playing the game in my spare time and sometimes bringing it to a friend's house. In Banana Blitz, they killed off the multiplayer, save for the party games, which I'll get into later. But for now, we'll outright say they are nowhere near enough to save the multiplayer aspect of this game. The original version was released with no multiplayer as well, sure, but this could have been easily fixed in a remake, and for cheap as well, considering how easy something like this would have been to code. I'm unsure how this game is doing in terms of sales right now, but with constant price drops and pretty much no word of mouth going around, I can't imagine it's as successful as Sega would have wished. Imagine if this game did have multiplayer. Potentially 4 people per copy could learn about the franchise after potentially not hearing it for years, and end up buying their own, and the chain would go on. In the year 2019 as well, with gameplay being consistently streamed on platforms like Twitch and YouTube, large audiences would have seen many people having fun and potentially want to buy the game for themselves as a party game. It's even worse when you realize that this game is on the Nintendo Switch. Considering the portability aspect, this ends up being such a wasted opportunity. Instead, the streams I've seen of this game are either awkwardly having people pass back and forth a controller, or focus purely on the mini-games if they wanted to play with people, which, as I've said, is really not enough to carry the game. I don't mean to keep harping on it, but it really is a major problem with the game, and did nothing but damage Monkey Ball's chance of being relevant again. Screw it. Since we're already here, let's just talk about the minigames. They're brutal. 5 years ago, this was really the focus of my review, for better or for worse. My biggest problem with them was the quantity and the quality. There were 50 minigames in the original, and they all controlled poorly, didn't make sense in the context of Monkey Ball, and were genuinely unfun to play. For BBHD, they cut out 40 of these minigames, which you may say is a step in the right direction, but I honestly don't think it makes the situation a lot better. Sure, it was nice not to have to play 50 for this review, but if you have a pile of garbage and remove a little bit of it, you're still left with some garbage. And I can't believe that I'm saying this, but I actually think that these games work better with motion controls. You can just tell these games were meant to be played with a Wiimote as a Wii launch title. So why were these even brought over? It's beyond me. Monkey Cursor is the closest one that comes close to being fun, but is plagued by awkward controls that were just shoehorned in to be played with a control stick. I can't stay on the path with them, I just can't. Funny enough, they actually brought back Monkey Snowboarding, which was actually the one game I commended in my Shovelware review. Is this a coincidence? Most likely. Do I want to pretend like they actually watched my review and took criticism from it? Maybe. Unfortunately, as I've been saying, it's blatantly obvious that the controls were originally mapped for a Wiimote, as moving is extremely difficult, and therefore I don't even like this game here. Hurdle Race, which I once made fun of for the awkward Wiimote and nunchuck controls, actually probably controlled better with that. Instead, you just press L and R rapidly back and forth, like a cheap Mario Party minigame. Slingshot is virtually unplayable with stick controls. The only minigame that was even brought back from the classic games was Monkey Target, which feels really awkward and is extremely watered down. To tell you the truth, I can't make it to the platform once. I don't know if that's a me issue, but I don't know, it doesn't control well. The minigames just don't fit what a Monkey Ball game should be. Whack-a-mole? Really? Hammer throw? Where's Monkey Bowling and Monkey Race? Take a look back to Monkey Ball 1. There were 6 minigames, and each one genuinely feels like it belongs there. Not only do some rely on the physics and principles of the main game, such as race and bowling, but each one is creatively integrated and crafted around the monkey and the ball concept. These minigames get so far away from the idea that it's almost insulting. I honestly feel like Mario Party minigames have more depth than some of these. Now, this is easier said than done, but what I would have done is remove every minigame period and just remake 3 of the ones from the original game. It was fairly unanimous that the minigames were not great, so why force them into a remake and debatably make them worse? And yes, again, there's less, but it's essentially the same problem as the original, quantity over quality. Everything negative I've talked about so far begs the questions. First, if Sega was looking to port a Monkey Ball game, why did they port Banana Blitz and not a classic game? And second, if they had to port Banana Blitz, why did they not fix most of the issues that plagued the game? Well, at the end of the day, all I can do is offer my opinion combined with a few sources that we do have. From what we know about the game, there was a very limited time and budget for the development. According to an interview with the developer, this was the cheapest and quickest game they could have ported, with the least amount of effort. Now, this we don't know for sure, but rumors of a new Monkey Ball game and a trademark actually arose around the same time of the announcement of Rolled Out, which is a Monkey Ball spiritual successor on PC. Now, do I think the two are related? It's up for debate, we don't have any confirmation, and ultimately I'm unsure. On one hand, the way that most major corporations work, it's hard to imagine them straight up impulse lighting a project. On the other hand, this is Sega, who, aren't the most logical company and never have been, so who knows, I certainly don't. I do presume some people will say we should go easy on a game because of a low budget and rushed release, and as a game reviewer, I understand there is a line or morality and balancing on how other reviewers approach these types of situations. All I can do is offer my stance on it. Even if it seems harsh, this is a completed video game that was sold to me for money that I had to spend. Yes, it was $40 instead of $60, but $40 is much more significant than something like $10 or $20, and teeters on being a full-price game. Even then, I don't think that this game should have been worth $40. There isn't enough content. I never believed that a game's development history or issues should make it okay for its faults. It's a finished product that you can buy in stores that Sega put their name on. They could have delayed it or given it more money or pretty much anything to make it a better product, so no, I don't think we should go easy on it. I will say though, I think there is a fair distinction in this case of the game between the development team and the company who funded and planned the schedule of release, in this case being Sega. I can tell that the development team had passion and drive behind this game, but they really needed the support of Sega. So with this review, I want to emphasize yet again, I don't really think it was the development team's fault that this game is weak. I think if it were up to them, they would have wanted to just make a new Monkey Ball game. But instead, they had to work with what they had, make drastic workarounds, and shoehorn in ideas that didn't even really work in 2006, let alone in 2019. Because this could have been only one of the few chances that Monkey Ball even has left, and I think it was genuinely wasted. As for the main experience, I have lots of mixed feelings about it. To start, the game's controls aren't terrible, but I don't feel like it has the same precision that the classic games have. Turning always feels very sharp to me, but there's nothing I can say is legitimately bad about the pure movement. I think overall I can say there's times where it's actually legitimately fun, but at the same time, and I'll explain this furthermore, it's definitely a different type of fun than the classic era provided for me. One thing that is in this game's favor is the removal of motion controls, which wouldn't have been possible in modern hardware, of course. And this is a huge benefit to the game. It makes it playable. Unfortunately, you can really tell, though, that some levels were meant to be motion controlled, as some levels are stupid easy with a control stick, such as level 9-2, which is really late in the game, but is a joke. And that's just one example. I think it was a waste not to make new levels with this engine, or at least drastically rework some of them. I will note that some rails and stuff are changed overall, but not a lot's different. Back in the wee old ages of 2006, this was the first Super Monkey Ball game to have a jump button. In my original review, I went into the idea of it in a very cold manner, not being very open to it and outright dismissing it. Having a jump button does mean the level design has to change almost entirely from the early games. The original games, of course, were purely controlled with the control stick, as they were ported from an arcade machine. I actually thought the simple control led to more creative game design and made the levels feel more like puzzles that you had to learn to get good at. Banana Blitz introducing a jump button doesn't inherently make it bad, but changes the gameplay in a very different way. It ultimately feels more like a platformer to me than the arcade game I once loved it for. Also gone, which I'm guessing is related to the jump button, is the mini-map, which is one of those things you don't realize how much you need it until it's gone. Falling is very difficult without one. But the thing is, I never gave the jump button a chance back in 2015. I literally maybe played through 2 worlds in my Shovelware review and not much more for my revisiting. So you know what? I did this time, knowing that the motion controls I once tested were gone. And you know what? I still don't like it. Like I said, I always played Monkey Ball for more of an arcade puzzle experience and not a platformer. It feels genuinely wrong to me and turns this game into something so far out there that I just can't enjoy it the same way I did the original games. That's not to say I don't get any enjoyment out of playing this game, because that would be a lie. There are times I am having an okay time, and that's fine, but it just doesn't capture the Monkey Ball experience for me, and that is ultimately my biggest problem with Banana Blitz and Banana Blitz HD. It lacks any type of soul or meaning that the original games had. Again, I'm not saying it's outright a bad game, it's just so different and not what I look for in the series. Banana Blitz was essentially a soft reboot of the franchise. Not only is it almost an entirely different game with different game modes and ideas, they changed their designs. I do have a perspective shift on this, however. I personally don't like them and would really like a return to the older designs, but I can't say with a straight face that this ruins or dampens the experience of the game, because it doesn't. And you know, things do have to change and evolve over time. You can't do the same thing forever. Me saying the designs were a problem with the game simply isn't true. I still think they look bad. Aya looks way too happy, and Baby, well, looks ridiculous, and in the minigames looks even more ridiculous. Oh my god, what did they ever do to you? At least we have Tuxedo Baby. I guess while I'm here, I may as well just talk about the characters overall. This is another thing they changed from the classic games. The classic games had every character be even, meaning there was no advantage or disadvantage to who you chose. In this game, every character has different stats. Aya, of course, is well-rounded, Mimi is slightly faster and jumps slightly higher, Baby is pretty light and pretty fast, and actually in only one level can fit into a small groove to get a time advantage. This, as far as I remember, is the only instance in the game where a portion of the level is blocked off unless you use a particular character. I'm ultimately glad they didn't overdo that, but it's just so odd. It's literally flirted with once in the entire game. Gon is a nuisance to the player. He has terrible speed, is very heavy, and his jumps are terrible. There are some levels that are almost unplayable with him, which really has me wonder if they even playtested him. There are 2 new characters, Yan Yan and Doctor. Yan Yan was actually considered in the original game to be the best character due to her jumping ability and decent speed, and she's still pretty good here and pretty fun to play as. Doctor, he's a good top speed, but his jump is way too short. I don't recommend him. Plus, why is he just called Doctor when every other character has like a creative name? It pisses me off. New to the game though is a non-monkey character, being none other than Sonic the Hedgehog himself. He's pretty broken. He has an insane top speed and jump, and yeah, I guess he's actually pretty fun to play as, but it does remove some of the challenge. I really don't like his animations, or lack thereof, and it's really lazy. They just straight up stole the model from Sonic Generations, in my opinion. There's not even a jump sound effect from the classic Sonic games, which really does feel like a wasted opportunity. It feels more like a PC mod to me than an actual canon character the developers put in, and obviously this was done as a cash grab because Sonic sells and they really want this game to sell, and it was just lazy. They could have done this a lot better, in my opinion. Why not have some Sonic themed worlds or have some Sonic songs in the game? If you wanted to make this a crossover, you should have gone a little further with it, and I think it's just a lazy cash grab in my opinion. Even if he is fun to play, it doesn't do the game any favors. And even worse, he's really unbalanced and overpowered, so everyone's going to use him if they're speedrunning it. I really don't think having 7 different characters in a game this relatively small was a great idea. For one, if you're focusing on speed, literally every character is irrelevant besides Sonic. As I said, there's not many exclusive things you can do with individual characters. There's occasionally a banana you can jump to with a higher jump, but pretty much everyone's just going to end up playing as Sonic or Yan Yan. So why bother putting in 7 characters? Why bother putting in Gon if he's at a severe disadvantage? I get that this was supposed to be an evolution or a soft reboot, but this is not the way to do it. It's even more silly when you realize that Doctor and Yan Yan really don't have a lot of purpose. In my opinion, if they just spread the stats among 4 original characters instead of having each one be slightly different, It would have been way more efficient. You end up having characters that are pretty similar to each other, such as Ai and Mimi, Doctor and Gongon, Yan Yan and Sonic. It's an idea that maybe could have had potential, but really fails to go anywhere, and in my opinion, it's a detriment to the game and its accessibility, because why play as your favorite character if he or she is bad? Again, focusing on a casual lens, someone who liked to play Gongon in the classic games will not enjoy playing as Gongon here. Someone who liked to play as Ai will struggle more if they chose Sonic. It's overcomplicated and doesn't really need to be, and shouldn't have even been introduced in the first place. Also new to Banana Blitz, there are boss fights, which I also crapped on in my review. I know lots of people actually like the boss fights, but I really don't think they have a place in Monkey Ball. Again, it gives it more of a generic platformer vibe, not to mention some of these bosses are like straight up broken. World 2 feels like a terrible beta version of what they intended it to be. The camera can't keep up, there are random platforms that are really awkward to get to, and the boss just kinda moves around weirdly in stalls. Not to mention, the bullets are incredibly cruel, and sent me flying off the stage multiple times. And I know I'm not the only one who had this experience, because everyone I've talked to about it and watched play it feels the same way. The closest thing we have to a good quote-unquote boss is World 4's, which really feels like more of a level if anything, but even that is pretty broken. It starts off pretty fine, but as you get closer, hitting the bullets that are far away is almost impossible. And again, I'm not trying to focus on speedrun strats for this review, but you pretty much have to do them here, and ignore the intended way of hitting the bullets far away. Even then, it can be difficult and not fun to deal with on a first playthrough. World 5's boss is also really frustrating. It seems you can't go anywhere without getting attacked by a barrage of tentacles and whatever these things are. The rest of the bosses range from mediocre to fine, but really boring. It's also important to note that if you die in a boss, the health doesn't stay down, which means if you die 2 minutes in, you're playing those 2 minutes again. I guess I can see why some people may enjoy these if they didn't play the classic games, but I don't know, it slows the game down and feels like padding to me. Speaking of enemies, this game actually has enemies in it, which is very odd, but they aren't traditional enemies in the sense that you can't kill them. I like the idea of some of them, like the birds in World 1, which help make it feel more lively. Hell, I'll say in general the levels just feel more lively and more like an organic world than the classic games ever did. There are enemies, stuff like tree stumps, and good background design, so I will give credit to the game where it deserves it. Like I said, it feels more organic than computer generated. Some of the enemies though really fail at being enemies, like these terribly programmed things that just run off the stage. Come on, this programming is just like a shovelware level of bad and embarrassing for a major corporation to release. The other enemies you can't kill, but they just kind of hang around and do nothing. They may as well have just been bumpers that move around. Speaking of bumpers, oh man, they really got carried away with these. They're littered almost everywhere, in places they really shouldn't even be. It feels like some intern found the copy and paste tool and just kind of had a blast. There are also these, oh my god, and these freaking boost pads that I hate. Don't use them, just don't. My advice to you if you're playing this casually is just straight up ignore them and jump over every single one. Most of the time they just send you flying and you can't do anything about it, and it often just kills you. You can have them send you flying much less if you carefully approach them, but even then you still get yeeted lots of the time. I don't know if this was intended to be a trap, but even if it was, my god, what a cruel trap. It would have been fine on like one level, but considering they're pretty much everywhere in late game, it feels insane. It almost feels like they were smartly placed, but they messed up the physics on it or something, which, as I've said, really makes me question if these levels were play tested. And one level that backs my claim that these levels probably weren't is level 10.5. 10.5 is one of the hardest levels I have ever seen in a casual video game like this. It's nearly impossible. Doing this level without speedrunning strats, which only marginally help at best, is just brutal. I spent over an hour on this level on my first playthrough. I can't imagine how many kids, or hell, anyone who played this game just couldn't beat this. It's so wonky, and the collision, oh my god, the collision, it just kills it. Considering this level was fairly broken in the Wii version and wasn't fixed here, it really backs my claim that they didn't test some of these levels out. Speaking of the collision, we need to talk about it. It's not great, and I don't mean to talk about the jump button again, but probably wouldn't have been a problem if this game didn't have a jump function, because every time you land, you can go flying in a ton of different directions. Floors genuinely feel weird in some levels. The bridges are terrible to go on, and there's cracks in the floor in World 4 that really should have just been part of the overall design and not actually have physics. It just bumps you up for some reason. Again, things that probably could have been found in playtesting if I found them on my first playthrough. And I need to talk about a massive problem with this game. At least on the Nintendo Switch version, you will drop inputs. It's not often, but it's a problem that really shouldn't exist, especially in Monkey Ball. I've been told it's part of the collision and not the control, so I'm not going to fault it on the control, but it's still a problem. Even if it's only once out of every 100 jumps, it's still a jump you're dying on. As someone who did spend like 80 hours speedrunning this game, I never felt like the collision was even a bit consistent, making it really difficult to predict what will happen when you land. Some level designs just feel really jank. 7-1 is unnecessarily difficult. There's like a funnel at the end, and getting through, at least with Baby, is really innate. Because of the collision, you will drop a lot of inputs and will often just not make the jump. Granted, weird levels are few and far between, but really makes the game feel awkwardly designed in my opinion. Also with the story mode, I don't think it had the best progression, honestly. I felt like Worlds 1 through 5 were really easy. Then the game's kind of difficult for a bit, and then World 10 is pretty hard, with 10-5 being almost impossible. I think if they're going to do Worlds, they probably should have paid more attention to the progression of the game. Overall though, I feel like once you beat it once, the game is pretty easily casually to play again, besides maybe like 2 levels. I never felt that way about Monkey Ball 1 or 2, for instance, which I still struggle with some levels I've been playing my whole life. It didn't need to be overly difficult, but a little more challenge for replayability would have been nice. One thing I actually think this game did better than the classic games was the bonus levels. They're actually fun. You go around collecting bananas with a counter. They don't repeat. They're not overly complicated like something like Fighters from SMB2. And yeah, they're good. And the bonus theme is awesome. But like anything with this game, there seems to be a problem. You can't access them, or the boss levels for that matter, from the main menu without beating 4 levels for the bonus world or 8 levels for the boss. I can't understand why they did this. It makes practicing them impossible unless you spent extra time to beat the levels. And that's another thing. Practice mode is gone, like straight up removed. So practicing individual levels, something that was a breeze in the original games, is such a pain here. Not to mention, if you practice any odd level and then try going back to the world later, say in a speedrun or just another casual playthrough, the menus will glitch unless you restart the world, which is really infuriating. Also stripped from this game was replays, which, yeah, this should have been here. It is true that modern consoles have replay functions built in, but they don't always work the most reliably. They're difficult to access, and the Switch specifically only saves like 30 seconds of them now, so levels that are up to 120 seconds, or hell, even 60 seconds, you can't fully save. I don't think in-console replays is a solid or even intended workaround for this issue. That's another thing with this game. Some of the levels are just so long, ignoring some speedrunning skips. But hell, even then, some levels don't have skips. And something like World 5-8 is just brutal to play. You literally just go up a spiral for eternity. I think 60 seconds really was the sweet spot with the classic games. And granted, not all the levels in this game are 120 seconds. I just can't get behind some of these longer levels. Shifting gears to the aesthetics, the skyboxes themselves, I'm pretty mixed on. I actually love some of them, such as World 3, which is like this beautiful and comforting looking snow level. World 8, which is really colorful and vibrant space area, and World 10, which is just, again, beautiful to look at. The rest range from tolerable to really bad, honestly. For example, World 9, it just looks really gross and gives me like a really cheap feel. I do think overall Monkey Ball 1 and 2 did this better, and also I feel like 1 and 2's designs were so much more or less generic. Here we have grass world, forest, snow, desert, swamp, lava, cloud. Yeah, I've seen this before. At least with 1 and 2, they did kind of use some of these, but they had their own feel to them and felt genuinely creative. Music-wise, I heard people are in kind of a bit of a toss-up on it. Now, as someone who didn't play the original that much, I don't remember many, if any, of the original soundtrack, which was actually removed in this remake, save for World 3. But to be honest, I really like the music in this game, like, legitimately. From the theme song, which gets me way too pumped up to play the game, to some awesome tracks such as World 10 and the bonus stage. I really like them and think they actually nailed it in this department. Again, I know that's not the most popular opinion, but I don't have an attachment to the original, so going in with a fresh lens as a new player, that's just how I feel. I will say though, when they use tracks from Monkey Ball 1 and 2, it feels really awkward to me, but these moments aren't too much of the game, so I'm not going to dock the game for that. I'm also not saying that remakes are outright better than the Wii version in terms of music, but for the purpose of the game, I enjoyed them. One thing I really like that they added, and is one that I actually suggested when I heard they were making a remake, is costumes. Now apparently they're ripped straight from Super Monkey Ball 3D, which doesn't bother me too much because I didn't really remember that, and I think they're pretty cool to have. They're fun unlockable. I do think they should have been unlocked maybe in a store with the bananas you get, but not a big deal. Speaking of bananas, every 20 of them grants you an extra life. The bunches also vary now, usually depending on how hidden the bunch is. The original did bananas as lives as well, but had so much more meaning there, considering you could actually game over. Here you can soft game over, but it really doesn't matter, so what's the point? The game developer's answer to that would be the completion medals you get for not game overing in a world. But they literally do nothing besides giving you bragging rights, and even then they're kinda broken, because if you beat the game in one sitting, your lives carry over from world to world, meaning you can stop and get every banana in the easier worlds, and hell, in the harder worlds, and just straight up get all the completion medals, assuming you have an easy go around. It's so weird how they did this. It almost feels like an oversight, but I guess it works. But lives don't save, so just remember that every time you restart, you won't have your life anymore. But again, there's no real point to any of this besides bragging rights. New to this game is a time attack mode. I put new in air quotations because this is pretty much what the way they shoehorn in a beginner, advanced, and expert. I didn't bring this up earlier because I really don't consider it to be what the past games had, because really what they did was just take the story mode levels and lazily split them between the three. Differences are your time is tracked overall, which is something new admittedly, and you can game over and run out of lives, plus you can't use Sonic, so it does spruce things up a bit, but it does feel a bit shoehorned in. What is cool about it is that there is a leaderboard, which does promote some replayability, so credit where credit is due. You can also do the same thing with minigames, which, okay, if you want to play them single player, go ahead, I guess. There is one problem with these, and that's you can't do them offline. Now, that's obvious, right? You can't connect to a leaderboard if you don't have an internet connection. But the problem is, you'll literally be sitting on this loading screen forever if you don't have a connection without a prompt to exit back to the menu. So I actually had to close out my entire game and reboot it. It's essentially a soft lock, which again could have been easily playtested. It wouldn't be that big of a deal if you started the mode and it said you need to be connected to the internet to save your times, but they literally tell you nothing, so your score essentially goes to waste. So I guess don't try this on a plane ride or anything. I do want to point out that this game did get a PC port, which is actually the first Monkey Ball game on PC. I don't have a way to play PC games, but apparently they did add some stuff to this game, such as a camera mode. They fixed some collision issues and also added cubes and triangles. Huh. My point is, they didn't really patch anything major on consoles, and this review is more focused on the console version, but just know that lots of my points I bring up do apply to the PC version as well. People are also good at modding stuff, which, hey, I know nothing about, but it is cool that they can choose their own music and characters and whatever PC gamers are doing nowadays. I know some people are actually working to make the game more enjoyable, so credit to them for doing so. It is really frustrating though that the PC version had updates and more content from Sega than the console versions, but launched for $10 cheaper on Steam. Honestly, this does alienate me a bit, and I recommend to you that you don't buy Sega games day one from here on out if they're going to continue this model. So, Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD. What do I think of it overall? Well, I do understand I did critique it a lot in this review, but I don't hate the game. I think it's probably a 6 out of 10 at best, and maybe a 5 out of 10 at worst. Probably more worth it at clearance price. I can't say this game is outright good. There are just so many problems with it that really hurt my experience with it. I did try with this game to enjoy and give it a chance, I promise, but I ultimately still don't like it very much, and I don't think it was the best choice to port over. Considering most of the game would have had to been scrapped to fix the problems with the Wii version, they should have just made a new game. And I get that this was made on a low budget, as I said earlier, but it didn't have to be. They didn't have to go insane with a new Super Monkey Ball game. Give us some new levels and maybe a few mini games, and I think Monkey Ball fans would have been happy. I also can't imagine that Deluxe would have been that much more expensive to port, which brings us to the real reason that I think Banana Blitz was ported, and that's because it sold the best out of the series. I don't think that Sega truly understands that sales doesn't equal quality. Superman 64 sold so well that the company considered making a PlayStation port. And just think about all the games nowadays that release that suck but sell millions. Within their own company, Sonic 06 was a platinum seller on Xbox 360, and they know that game is unanimously hated. I think Banana Blitz being a Wii launch title gave it an undeserved sale push that is giving Sega these rose-colored glasses, because ultimately, they didn't fix many problems, and even brought some more. The minigames are still terrible, the characters are unbalanced, the level design is wonky, and now there's jank physics, broken menus, and even more unbalanced characters with the addition of Sonic. Granted, there are some good things with the game, such as being able to play it without motion controls, an updated menu, and polished graphics, but at its core, it's still Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz, and not much has changed overall. You can only do so much to fix something that's just broken. And like I said, I don't think it was the devs team's fault, because they do show a sense of passion and excitement for this franchise, but we're very limited. I think it is Sega's fault ultimately for half-assing the idea of giving this series a legitimate chance. So listen, I don't know the future of Super Monkey Ball. There's talks of a new game according to the Twitter, but I'm not getting too cozy because this game most likely underperformed. There are spiritual successors coming out, such as Rolled Out and Paper Ball. Rolled Out could be the future of Monkey Ball with a level creator and all, but it not being on Switch will hurt accessibility in the casual audience, so it's tough to say. According to interviews, the dev team is well aware that fans prefer the older Monkey Ball. And hey, it's nice to be acknowledged. I think I would have been happy hearing that 5 years ago as well. And I want nothing but the best for this series. I may have critiqued it to a T in this video, but it's out of love. It's not out of hate or disdain like my Shovelware video may have come off as. And I hope if they continue, or are in a position to continue, that maybe we'll get a return to form. And if this was the stepping stone to get there, well, it was worth it. Anyways, this has been NinjastarCompass, and yeah, if you like this video, make sure to check out the EE podcast to hear me talk about Monkey Ball with a group of community members. Follow me on Twitch to watch me live stream, because I do speedruns, and occasionally I'll do some Monkey Ball. And yeah, all my links are in the description. Peace out, and yeah, thanks for watching. This is a long video. So, have a good one.